You can start recording. There we go. Welcome. Happy to see you. Happy summer. Happy almost school year starting. Crazy. We were just talking, Amy and I, about how fast the years go by when you're raising a son or daughter. 1 second, please. The dogs are usually better than they're behaving tonight. There must be somebody walking by, which is always, cause for concern. So my name is Beth Barteletti. I am the Senior Director of College Advising with International College Counselors. I'm happy to have you with me here tonight and to go over some very basic or not so basic information about the college admission process, but to give you a general overview as to what this looks like sort of from soup to nuts and how we at International College Counselors can help you with this process. So just a little bit about me. I've been in the business or in the profession for 27 years, which again, I can't believe. I tell the kids I've been doing this longer than you've been alive and way longer. Before I worked with International College Counselors, and I've been with them for 8 years, I worked at a high school in Portland, Oregon. I'm from Miami, but for adventure's sake, when I was young, I moved out to Oregon and I worked for a high school out there. And then I worked for Reed College, which is one of the premier liberal arts colleges in the country. If you don't know it, you should look it up. It's one of the top producers by percentage of future PhDs in the country. It's quite the intellectual environment. So I worked with them for 14 years on the admission side. So I have the perspectives of both being a college admission counselor and a high school counselor, and now an independent counselor. So I know this process from all the sides of the equation. So a little bit about International College Counselors and what we do. We help students and their parents navigate this whole process. Whether or not you are from this country or grew up in this country and attended college 30 years ago, and now you're going through it with one of your kids, it's very, very different than it was when those of us of a certain age were going to college. I applied to 2 colleges using a typewriter, even subsequent years, really up to the computer age. That's how everything was done on paper. And now it's very easy, relatively speaking, to apply to numerous colleges. The main time constraint or the time consuming piece is the essays. But the process has changed. And one thing that's constant in college admission is change. I was just talking with a family about this the other day and saying, for instance, the University of Michigan has now decided to have an early decision option. The ACT has recently dropped the science section as a requirement. And so we have to pay attention to which colleges are allowing students to take the ACT without the science, or do you have to take it with the science, et cetera, et cetera. So lots of sort of balls to keep in the air and random pieces to keep track of. And that's one of the things that we do to help you. So we help you with planning your high school classes. We help with extracurricular and summer activities in terms of helping you figure out not what's going to quote unquote look best on a resume, but giving you ideas for how to pursue the interests that you already have. We obviously help with essay editing and brainstorming. So all of that starts really in depth in January of the student's junior year. So they apply in the October, November of senior year, but same calendar year as they are junior. So basically we're starting like 8 months ahead of time, 8, 9, 10 months ahead of time to get those applications ready to the extent that we can before the Common App opens for that class. If the student has interviews as part of their application process, we help with those as well. So you can see on the slide all the things we help with. And we are all over the country. We have offices all over the country, but mostly today we conduct most of our business virtually. So that's very helpful. I worked with a student in Australia last year, so that was very interesting. I learned a lot about Australia, and he's actually coming to the US for college now, which was his goal. So as I just said, college admissions is changing. It's more stressful, confusing, and complicated than ever before. So these are the ways we can decrease your stress, help you understand the process, create an individualized plan, which is one of the things we do. So a customized plan for your student and how they can get from point A to point B being the college of their choice, helping them apply early to alleviate some of that stress, and then breaking the process into smaller, more manageable tasks. So let's get right into it. And let me see if I can I just want to see if I can move the chat, which is right where there we go. Nope, let me move it down. Okay, perfect. All right, so what are colleges looking for? So obviously we know, and I'll get to this, they're looking for good grades, good test scores, et cetera. But first and foremost, they're really looking for diversity. And I know, that's sort of a hot word nowadays, but I'm not saying it in terms of how it's being used, except to say that they are looking for this well-rounded class. Now, people often think, like I've had more than one family ask, does my student need to do athletics? Like they think the student has to be involved in music and athletics and, academic things and charitable things, volunteer, et cetera. And that's nice if that is your student, but they are also looking to fill the class they need kids who are interested in philosophy and biology. So there's diversity in the subject area that they need to fill on that campus. They always want to be able to say, we have a student coming from every state in the union, and we have X number of students coming from 32 other countries, or what have you. So that's geographical diversity. Obviously, the schools with athletic teams want winning teams, so they're looking for talented athletes, people with special interests or talents, whatever that may be, people who are artists, musicians, thespians, people who are underrepresented groups or first generation, special situations, good stories. There's a book out there called From Homeless to Harvard, or maybe it's called Homeless to Harvard, but it's about a girl who grew up essentially homeless. And after many trials and tribulations, she landed at Harvard, and not even as an 18-year-old. I think she was in her 20s when she landed there, but that would be the example of a special situation, good story that she was able to pull herself up through her own power and make something of her life despite her beginnings. And then institutional fit. So that basically means, does the student and what he or she is looking for match what we as an institution offer? So it may be that, for instance, when I was working at Reed has no athletic teams. So I remember reading an application where the student said, I want to continue playing baseball in college. And I was going, okay. That's not a fit for you. So that's a very obvious, thing to say, but they're looking for, do you understand what we offer, and does what we offer match what you're looking for? And that's a large part of that essay. Most college, or not most colleges, but maybe we'll say half, ask a supplemental question in their section of the application that says, why do you want to go to the University of Michigan, the University of Wisconsin, Duke, USC, et cetera? All sorts of colleges ask this question. So they're looking for somebody who's fitting what they offer. So their two are kind of like jigsaw puzzle pieces that go together. So as I mentioned earlier, we're starting the single most important piece of the college application are your grades, but also the rigor of your coursework. So the most important thing is not that you have a 4.0. I mean, that's awesome if you do, if you have all A's, but it's better to have all A's when you're challenging yourself in the curriculum. So you don't want to be at a place that offers 15 APs and never take any because you're protecting your 4.0. So conversely, if you're at a place that doesn't offer APs, but does maybe offer ATs, advanced topics, or they offer ACE classes, or they offer something like I worked with a student who was at a school, they had what they called CHI classes, and it was the name of the school and then advanced intensive or something. So CHAI, and that was their basically the equivalent of their AP curriculum. So if they were in a CHI class, it meant they were doing the highest level class in that subject area. So basically you want to be, and the analogy I use is you want to be putting your foot on the accelerator, but not so much that you crash the car into the brick wall. So you want to take the hardest classes that you can manage, in which you can make good grades. And good grades, of course, the more A's, the better. The more B's you have, the lower your chances of getting into the top tier schools or even a UF or an FSU. So you want to, that's why it's so important not to overload yourself with too many, high level classes if that's not the student that you are. If you can handle a less rigorous curriculum, then do yourself a favor and do that less rigorous curriculum. What is the second most important part of the application? Unfortunately, it's still standardized tests. Now, a lot of schools, as I'm no doubt you've heard, are test optional, but a lot of schools are returning to test optional now that the pandemic is several years behind us. So it is still required by all Florida schools. It's been reinstated for Georgia, Tennessee, a handful of IVs, Georgetown, Purdue reinstated it, I believe it was this year. So you do need to, I tell students, let's take the test, and as it says here, either test, SAT or ACT is acceptable. And you don't have to take both. It's Pepsi or Coke. The colleges don't care. So what I recommend is if you're working with a tutor that you have a diagnostic test to see which one is your better test. And if you're doing comparable or earning comparable scores on the two, then pick the one that you feel most comfortable with. Now, I say here, take the test as many times as needed so that they can super score, meaning they can take the highest math and the highest verbal from the SAT or the highest section score off the ACT. But Georgetown and a couple of the Ivies require that you submit all of your test scores. So when a student says, should I take this test for a fourth or fifth time? Hopefully you don't have to go there, but some of them are really working hard and they really want to continue to work on that. I'll look and say, are we applying to Georgetown? Are we applying to the Ivies? Or, the Ivies that require this? Because it's sort of, now we have to figure out the tightrope of, am I going to turn in 5 test scores because they're requiring all of them? In most cases, you can do the super score. So let's say you do take it 4 times and your best scores come out on 2 of the tests, then you only have to report those 2 tests. So these are the things we can help you navigate as part of this process, is helping you figure out to whom or to which colleges are you actually submitting. So if it's test optional and I have a 32, which is kind of in the middle of a good, score for some schools, not so good for other schools, where do I submit? So those are the things that we can help you with. And note that there are free practice tests available and just skill building at these websites. And just as a reminder, we will be sending the recording out after tonight so that you can revisit these slides. So as I said earlier, some of the IVs have returned to test required. Test blind is where the school is not even looking at test scores. So there's no point in submitting them there. They're not looking at them. You can submit them to the University of California system, but they will only be used for placement purposes in freshman classes, not for evaluation of one's application. We are still seeing a slight advantage with those who submit scores. So I had a parent ask earlier about this. So, and I was telling him that, yes, the student should retake the test. And if they can't, they had a good score, but not a tippy top score. So it's always an advantage to have, I mean, this seems sort of self-explanatory, but always an advantage to have a good score or a strong score over no score if they're test optional. So the advice I give is to look at the school's middle 50% range, test score range for the SAT or the ACT, and see if you fall within that range. And if you do, you should submit the test. And if not, because for instance, let's say you've got a 1400, that might look good for one university, but it's not going to help you at another university. Okay, another priority. After they've decided, okay, this student, essentially what they're doing with the test score and the grades and the rigor is assessing whether you can handle the coursework at their institution. Once they've sort of cleared you past that hurdle, they've said, okay, this student, they're making A's, maybe a couple B's in good coursework, etc. Can they handle our coursework? Okay, but we still have oodles of kids who are good, solid, or even, very bright students. How do we still narrow down? Because we've got, if we're at the University of Michigan, I think like 2 years ago, they had 80,000 applications, whereas 10 years prior to that, it had been 40,000. So let's say just off the top, we take out 40,000 applications because those 40,000 are not good students. They're not, we look at their app and we go, it's not going to happen. We still have to narrow that down to, if we're looking at a Harvard or a Duke, a 5 or 6 or 3%. So how do we then pick the class from the kids who remain? So then we're looking at what is the impact that these students make in their community in high school. What are they doing to improve their community? And I don't mean necessarily their wider community like Miami Beach, although it could be, yes, but they're literally the street they live on, the school they go to, they attend, one nonprofit in their community, etc. So you don't have to be, as I mentioned earlier, you don't have to be involved in 12 things. There's actually 10 things on the common application. And it's good to be able to fill all those things, but really what they're looking for is not a couple times a year you do a beach cleanup, but that you are concentrating on a few activities and excelling in those. They want to see that commitment, they want to see the passion, they want to see the skill. Now, when I say commitment, it's important to know that as students go into freshman year, it's fine if they start some activities and then don't follow through with them as they move into sophomore year, because freshman year is a great year for sort of looking around and figuring out what fits, who am I, what am I interested in, etc. So it's fine to start and then not, oh, the music club wasn't what I thought it would be, so let me go join the, I don't know, the marching band, or let me go into theater or something. figuring out what it is that I want to spend my time doing. Oh, and very important to keep a list of activities beginning with the summer before ninth grade, because you would be surprised at how little you or your child remembers about ninth grade once they're in 12th grade. They're going, what did, and sometimes I have my students put together a resume, and as they're going through the process, not we don't wait till senior year. We do it, that's part of our intake actually. And they'll be putting their stuff on the Common App, and I'm like, "What about the aviation club?" And "Oh, I forgot I did that." Yeah, it was on your stuff when you came in. Now, sometimes people will say, "Should I do X or should I do Y? Should I be on the tennis team or should I be in Girl Scouts?" And I say to the students, "What do you want to do? Where are your interests? What would give you more satisfaction?" So there's no right activity. There's no activity that's better than another. There's no hierarchy. It's not like if you're a Girl Scout, you get more points than if you're on the newspaper or what have you. So that's important to know. They're looking for meaningful participation also, like I mentioned, the beach cleanups where you just show up maybe a couple times a year. But are you a leader? How engaged are you? Are you a self-starter? Did you look around and see something that was missing from your school or from your community? I had a student who, and during he started this during the pandemic, he just put a note on his neighbor's doors saying he was collecting toiletries, and he would once a month make a run down to Camilla's house, which is a shelter here in Miami, and bring what he had collected just from a couple streets around his own house. So he saw a need. He knew that they need toothbrushes and socks and things like that. And so he would ask, I'm going down, like, I don't know, last Friday of the month, I'll be around to collect the things. So looking around and seeing something that's not there, that's not happening, that you could do is important. Creativity counts, depth counts, motivation. How can you show that motivation? How can you show that you're a self-starter, that you're engaged, etc.? All right. And this sort of takes what I was just talking about, the student who was donating to Camilla's house. They love it when you take action for your community and the world. So you might say, I'm a feminist, or I'm a conservationist, or I'm an animal lover. What evidence, what actions are you able then to show them? Are you just saying, well, I don't know, I can't come up with an example, but I think to myself, every time I walk my dogs, I think to myself, and I forget every time also, but I think I should walk around, excuse me, I should bring a pair of gloves and a garbage bag and pick up the trash that is just along the dog route, because it would just brighten up my little corner of the world. And even doing something like that could be, something that you put on your common application if you were to do it consistently. And even better, you grab a couple of friends and you each do it, and you make a commitment to do it once a week in your own neighborhood or whatever. Bring, get friends to come in with you, whether you're starting a new club or doing something individually that you can also do collectively. The colleges are also looking at if you're learning outside the classroom. Now, this is not an absolute must, but if you are, sorry, if you are, for instance, wanting to go into a more advanced math class, or you've always wanted to learn how to do science research, or you want an internship with a newspaper or a very local magazine, these sorts of things can be acquired during the summer by volunteering, shadowing, etc. When somebody asked me, they were told that if the student, it looks good on an application to get a job related to what you want to do. And yes, that's true. If you want to go into business, work for a real retail shop, or if you want to go into marketing, see if you can work for a marketing or a PR company. But if you don't know what you want to do, and this was the mother's question, what should he do? And I said, work in general is useful. And again, it's not a must, but if your student is working, it shows responsibility, it shows the ability to be punctual, to be part of a team, to recognize the value of a dollar, et cetera, et cetera. So that those are all like take direction, communicate with others, et cetera. So those are all good things that can go. Babysitting, pet sitting, all those things, lawn mowing. It doesn't have to be something, where you're getting setting up a W-2. It could be, I had a student a couple years ago he wanted to build his own computer, and his mom, he had some birthday money and money from grandma, but he still was short. And he said, so I got out, a towel and some soap and walked around the neighborhood asking my neighbors if they wanted their cars washed. And he was able to work this in sort of a funny way into his essay about how he got involved with computers, that he started this this project of building a computer, but he wasn't able, it wasn't just that he, borrowed mom's credit card and bought things off wherever he was buying them, but he showed the initiative that I'm going to earn some of my own money because I'm short. And so I'm going to figure out how to do this. And I think this was during the pandemic as well. So he had to do something that was outside, that didn't, require sort of personal contact. So another important component in the applications are the essays. So there's one main essay, which is called, they used to call it the personal statement. Now they're calling it the personal essay, Common App essay, whatever you're calling it. It's the main essay that goes to all the colleges on your list. So it should not be specific to any one college. This is your chance to tell your story. And it is not the place to necessarily talk about all your accomplishments. Really, what they're looking for is your humanity here. Who is the person behind the achievements or the accomplishments in this application I'm reading? Who is the person behind these grades, these test scores? Who are you in a third dimension, basically? I'm looking at you on a screen. I have no sense of the person behind these objective numbers. So it's really your opportunity, if you're the student, to share your voice with the committee to help them understand who that person is, what's important to you, what do you spend your time thinking about, what your feelings about things. They're looking for authenticity, so you are not trying to sound like you're perfect and that you have everything figured out. Your essays don't have to tie up nice and neat and everybody lived happily ever after. It can be, I'm still figuring things out. And also, I'm having to remind parents that, and I'm having to remind the kids that your essay does not need to be, sounding like it's written by Hemingway, and you definitely don't want it to sound like it was written by your parents. And almost anybody who spent any time reading applications can tell when mom or dad has taken over the essay, because it comes out sounding nothing like what a teenager sounds like. And I'm not talking about like slang or, things that the kids say that we don't say. It just, the approach is different, the perspective is different, the language is different. The same thing goes for AI. So AI wasn't a thing even 2 years ago. I mean, not in terms of writing college essays, but we can, I know, and so do all my colleagues, when I'm looking at something that was written by AI, it's a little too smooth, it's a little too polished, it's a little too sophisticated. And so if your writing is coming along or coming across as smooth and polished and sophisticated, the rest of your application better be smooth and polished and sophisticated in terms of your grades, your test scores, etc., because you don't want the essay to stand out as something that's different from what the rest of your application represents. So if you're using AI, like Georgia Tech says, it's fine to use AI to help you outline your ideas, etc. If you're using it, please use it cautiously. Do not use it to write your essay. That will be identified immediately. And really, they're looking for authenticity, like I said. So AI is naturally, by virtue of what it is, not authentic. Okay, so letters of recommendation. These I can't talk. I ask my students in the spring of junior year to ask two of their teachers from junior year, ideally from junior year, to write them their letters of recommendation. Like this says, you want to select two core subject teachers from junior year, but sometimes there might be someone who taught you like in 9th grade and they're going to teach you again in 12th grade, let's say, or they taught you in 10th, they're going to teach you again in 12th. That could work if there aren't two core teachers in junior year. So somebody who taught you in 9th or 10th and is teaching you again in 12th already knows you. You've got a history with them. The reason not to ask a 12th grade teacher who's never had you before is these are due November 1st. And so that gives them about a month to get to know you before you're asking them to write a letter of rec, which isn't a good idea. So when I say core subject teachers, I mean sort of the 5 main, so English, math, science, social science, or world language. If it's like an AP Psych teacher, that's fine because that's still a core class. It's a social science class or an AP research or seminar. But like, let's see, what would be a band teacher? That's not a core teacher. Now, some schools will allow you to submit what they call a supplementary rec, which could come from a coach, a band teacher, an art teacher, an advisor for a club you run, what have you. But ideally, they're looking for 2 core teachers from junior year to write those letters. So I think it's really important to help your recommender by providing them with a list of accomplishments or things that you took away from their class, because it's not really a lot of teachers want a resume and it's okay to give one to them, but the colleges already have your resume, so they don't need the teacher recommendation to be rehashing your accomplishments. That's already been mentioned elsewhere in your application. What the colleges want to know is what kind of citizen you are in the classroom. So if you're a junior, or really whatever grade you're in, you should be on your best behavior with the teachers. You should be prepared for class. You should be polite in class. You should be participate when you can, etc. So do the things that would make a teacher want to recommend you. And of course, say thank you when they've written the letter. The reason I asked for them, I'm not telling you to have them write the letter in the spring. I'm saying you request it in the spring, which gives them the summer to write it if they are so inclined. If they're not so inclined, then that's their problem because you're not hitting them in October with a teacher request, a letter request. You're just reminding them that you asked them back in May. And so if they haven't done it, that's their problem, not yours. How else can I plan now for college? So think about your initial school list. And this may be a little too early for freshmen, but you can start thinking about just, what are the things you like about your high school? Is it large and you like that? Is it small and you like that? Do you like that you get to know your teachers? Do you like that you have rah-rah football games or basketball games? Do you like the fact that you have amazing science labs? So what are the things that you're enjoying about high school? And so you want to think about top 5 things that your college must have. Like it must be no more than 3 hours driving distance away or whatever, or it must be a direct flight. Think about the distance, think about the size, think about what you are thinking you want to major in and making sure that it has that major. I was looking at Emory with a student the other day, and she's thinking about communications, and we were like, they have nothing in the way of communications at Emory University. So that, shifted the list a little bit. So these are all good things to be thinking about in terms of putting together that initial list. Then after your 5 must-haves, think about what you would like to have. So the things that aren't a deal breaker, but would be nice to have, and put those together. Even if you're a freshman, it's not a bad idea to start visiting colleges when you go to see grandma, or when you go to, I don't know, you go to Disney World, go to the University of Central Florida and check it out while you're up there. If you're anywhere that has a college, just go look at it, even if it's not ever going to be on your list, because if you familiarize yourself with different campuses, you begin to get a sense of what you like and what you don't like. So, oh, I didn't realize I would actually enjoy a university that's in the city like NYU, or oh, I visited NYU or Boston University and I said, no, I don't want a college in the city. Or I visited Bowdoin when my family was camping in Maine and decided I really like being out in, you know, rural America. So those are good things to think about in terms of putting together your list. Let's see. Okay. So most high schools have some sort of college planning software, whether it's Score, Maya, Cialfo, Naviance. Have I covered them all? Some sort of software that will help you see whether you're even in the conversation in terms of grades and test scores. So this one is from a couple of years ago. No, actually, okay, it's from 1 year ago, the scattergram. And you can see on this axis, well, actually, you can't see, but on this axis, we have the test score. And on this one, I forget which this is X and this is Y. I don't remember. And this is GPA. So if we're looking at students that got into the University of Pennsylvania from the years 2019 to 2024, and these are ICC clients who are coming from all different high schools. But when you are looking at this in your own high school, you can get a sense of, am I even in the ballpark for a school like this? So you can see that these two students one had a 5.0 at whatever their high school was, and one had a 4.5, and they were as far to the right. So this is probably a 35 and a 36 on the ACT. So you can begin to get a sense of, like I said, does it even make sense for me to be looking at the top tier universities, or do I need to think about schools that have a lower, that are less selective, but still just as good? So when you're getting to know the colleges, as you begin to narrow down that list, you want to look at their admission, obviously, at their admission page, but also the academics page. So if you are wanting to major in communications, what does a communications major look like at Syracuse versus Florida State versus UF versus Duke? So you get, like, they might have, you want to go into sport management, same thing. It's, at one school, it's in the School of Education at the University of Texas. It's in the School of Kinesiology at the University of Michigan. It's in the business school at other places. So you want to get a sense, as you narrow down that major, what each of these will involve at the schools on your list. But also attend, on a very much more general level, attend online information sessions. The schools I don't know that there's a college out there now that doesn't have an online information session. So you don't even have to visit to start with. You can start with the online information session, then decide if you want to go visit, talk to recent grads and alumni, ask parents and teachers. Your school should have college reps coming to visit, and typically juniors and seniors are invited to those. There are virtual college fairs online and also in-person college fairs called NACAC, which is the National Association for College Admission Counseling. You can tour college campuses, or visit from your couch at uvisit.com, campustours.com. YouTube is a great place to just, hey, what's good about NYU? What do you not like about NYU? You can find undoctored, censored information from students at those schools on YouTube, because they're not, looked overseen by the admission office. Oh, here are some of the other search engines I mentioned. Use those if they're available at your school. Every school has one. I shouldn't say every school has one, but if your school has one, that's the one they use. They don't have multiple. So Score, Maya, Cialfo, Naviance, Big Future, and Unigo. I mentioned. Show your interest. So visit all schools on your list virtually at the very least. There's no reason not to visit a school virtually if you haven't been to it personally or in person. I would hate to think that a student is going to apply to, I don't know, the University of Chicago, and the University of Chicago will know that you've never been on campus, you never opened their emails, you never did a virtual tour information session. So it's basically going to look to them like you aren't that interested. So what we want to do is show your interest. This is called demonstrated interest. And this is important for mostly the private schools and the smaller private schools. So the Ivies don't care. They have more applicants than they know what to do with. Stanford doesn't care. University of Florida, FSU. So the large publics don't care about demonstrated interest, but certainly you should demonstrate just for your own, knowledge and familiarization with what they offer. Attend rep visits if they come to your school, talk to the reps at college fairs, etc. Follow the school on social media. Your list should be about 9. You definitely want 9, or I don't want to say definitely want 9. You definitely want your list of schools to be all places that you would be happy attending. You don't want and I hate this word likely, because everybody's like, oh, I don't want to go to my likely school. That's just my likely school. What you want to do is find, 6 or 7 or 8 schools that you would be happy at, but they should have a range of selectivity. You don't want to apply to all schools that take 5% of their admit pool. That's just asking for an unhappy ending. Think about, I'm just watching the time, making sure that let me just run through this. Yeah, okay. Think about applying early. I've put together we have a blog on our website about the different types of what they call admission plans. So you've probably heard of early decision, which is where you apply with the idea that if I'm admitted, I will enroll. It's kind of like a marriage proposal. I propose to you. If you say yes, we're getting married. I'm going to that school. So there's a commitment to attend should you be admitted. Early action is where you are applying early and being notified early of your decision, but there is not that binding commitment to attend. And some of what complicates this is that some schools, like the University of Chicago, have early decision, which is binding, early action, which is not binding, and then regular decision. So they have different, what we call admission plans. So again, these are the things that we can help you navigate, because some of the Ivies also have what they call single choice early action or restricted early action. And there's rules around, if you're applying restricted early action, can you apply EA at other places? And it just becomes a very convoluted poker game in some ways. So, but applying early, whether it's early action, early decision, REA, single choice REA, single choice EA, can be a good idea, because as you're probably seeing as I'm speaking, that the overall acceptance rate, now these are just the Ivies, is, for instance, at Brown overall is 6%, but, and this is the class of 2019, so this is a couple years back, but some of them have since, like Princeton stopped giving out information. They stopped publishing their information. So this is just but it's still pretty accurate, even though it's a few years old. The numbers may not be accurate, but the ratios are. So let's say that Brown in this year admitted 6.6% overall, but 18% were admitted either early action. Well, it wouldn't have been early action because Brown only has early decision. So, and then regular decision was 5.17. So obviously you get a nice bump in likelihood if you are applying early. Same thing with Brown, 5.14, 4.4, 4.04 for regular decision, but 14, almost 15% for early decision. Now Harvard, for instance, has restricted early action as opposed to early decision, which these two have. But even that, look at this, 2.79 regular decision admit rate, but 13.44 if you're applying REA, restricted early action, which basically, like I said, there's rules around it, but these are all things that we can help you navigate. Okay, and then financial aid / merit-based scholarships. You want to research merit-based aid, which is not tied to financial need. So when people ask about scholarships, most scholarship money comes from the college itself. And scholarships in general means it's tied to merit. So tied to how strong you are as a student. That said, there are some merit scholarships that also require that the student have significant need. So, in other words, there's scholarships where you could be, Bill Gates' kid and still get a scholarship because you're such an amazing student. It doesn't matter how much money your family has. Or there's scholarships that you need to be an amazing student, or at least one of the best ones applying to that college, and demonstrate financial need, because that's a stipulation of that scholarship. But if you're looking for private scholarships, and a lot of these are sort of mini scholarships, they might be $1,000, $1,500, $2,500, et cetera, but every little bit helps. Those resources can be found at these websites. We actually send out a list of private scholarships once a month to our clients. So that's another benefit of working with us. Also, think about whether your state has scholarships like Florida's Bright Futures or Georgia's Hope Scholarship. That can be very useful. One thing I did want to say is that the Ivy League does not give out scholarship money. They give out financial aid, which is need-based, but they don't give scholarships. So if you ever hear someone say, my kid got into Princeton on a full ride, either they're not quite telling the truth, or their family doesn't have any money, and so they qualified for full financial aid, which, maybe they legit don't have that. Maybe they legit have full need, or maybe they legit hid some of their money. I don't know. But when people say, you hear that a lot, oh, I got a full ride or whatever, and it's like, yeah, Okay, whatever. I'm taking that with a grain of salt. So need-based financial aid is, so there's, like I said, merit scholarships and then need-based financial aid. And usually they say financial aid instead of scholarships, but lots of times they lump need-based aid into financial aid. But generally, if they're saying scholarships and financial aid, that's the difference. Financial aid is need-based, scholarships are merit-based. So with the need-based aid, this is where the FAFSA comes in. It's the free application for federal student aid. And this slide says everyone should fill it out, but you can go to on every college's website and go to that search bar and say net price calculator. And you can do some number crunching and figure out if your family would qualify for merit aid at that, sorry, not merit aid, financial aid at that school. So you can kind of do a financial aid check before you even apply. And some schools will do what they call a financial aid pre-read before you apply, just to save, the hassle of going through the application process only to find out it's not going to be affordable. So the FAFSA is generally available starting October 1st. Last year it was December 1st, but it's generally open October 1st. And in terms of submitting it, you should do so at the same time that you're applying for aid. I find that a lot of students will, or families, they'll apply for admission, then they get in, then they start looking for financial aid. And it's like, oh, no, you need to apply for your financial aid at the same time you apply for admission. And then the CSS profile is required by many private colleges, usually in addition to the FAFSA, because they extract different information from that family. And here's that net price calculator that I mentioned on all the colleges' websites. All right, final thoughts, and I'm just making it in under the wire with 5 minutes left, but I will take some questions. So we want to take challenging classes. We want to prepare for our tests, get involved, keep a list of your involvement, explore it's not too early to explore your majors, your career goals, think about what you like to do, those sorts of things. Do some shadowing for, something that you think might be interesting. Research scholarships ahead of time, stay organized, get help, whether it's a tutor for your classes, a tutor for your test prep, or an independent advisor like me or my colleagues. Be confident there is a college for everybody. There's more than one college for everybody. It seems that in our society, we all talk about the same 25 colleges, but there are thousands of colleges out there in the United States. I have a friend whose son is going to the Webb Institute. Probably nobody on this webinar has heard of Webb, W-E-B-B. It is a maritime school. He's learning how to do naval engineering, and the entire program is free. So for him, that was the best option because of what he wanted to do, and who doesn't like free college? So it's, we can help you find colleges that meet your needs and help you figure out how to get from where you are today to where you want to be in college. So the last slide is just, if you would like to schedule a free consultation with me or with one of my colleagues, we'd be happy to do so. The contact information is there, and I will take questions. So put them in the chat if you would, and thank you for spending time with us. I'll stay on for a couple minutes if you need to hop, obviously, feel free. We'll send out the recording later this week, as I mentioned earlier. Have a great evening. Thank you. Okay, let's see. No questions in the chat. Lots of thank yous, so I hope that was helpful. Oh, so somebody wants to know, how do colleges super score ACT post no science? they are, I believe, and this is still in flux in some places, um, they're going to calculate if the student takes it with no science, they're going to uh, average the scores like they used to without the science, obviously, because that won't be there. If the student has taken it with the science will be incorporated into the average. If the student, let's say, took a test with science and subsequently took a test without science, they will still take the super score, which is uh, the highest, the average of the highest three sections without the science. And the science score will be a separate entity. If you may not remember, but for a while the ACT had writing, and your composite was independent of that writing score, and it will be essentially the same with the science, that they'll average the three, the reading, the English, and the math, and then the science will be off to the side, and if it wasn't taken, it won't be off to the side. Now, a couple or all, I know UF and FSU have both said they're not going to require the science, but Florida Bright Futures will. So we're telling the students to take the science, unless they already, have their lists firmly in hand and they know that those schools, not all the schools have even come out with a policy on it yet. But basically that's how they're going to do it. All right. If anybody has questions, anybody who's still on, my email address is there. It's simple, beth@internationalcollegecounselors.com. Feel free to send me your questions later. I'd be happy to help. Or as I said, to set up a free consultation, which is 30 minutes, and I can help you with any questions you like, or let you know how we work with students getting ready to go to college. So thank you for spending part of your evening with us, and I hope that all of you have a great weekend and great high school experience down the road. And hopefully this won't be the last webinar of ICCs that you attend. All right, everybody, take care. Bye-bye.